Testing.
Good to go.
We're good.
She was.
It says that you were? Yeah.
So we'll have to fix that. So you two were, and he actually was.
Apparently we mixed up you and Bruce.
Well,
This is
exactly alike.
Yeah, a lot of similarities.
Many similarities. I've been mistaken too many times.
Today is Monday, July 24th, 2023, and we are at the Green Ladle. We'll call this meeting to order at 5:32 p.m. and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll begin school committee member introductions with Counselor Scott.
Linda Scott, Lewiston City Council Representative on the school committee.
Paul Bopelant, Ward 7 Representative.
Megan Hurd, Ward 6.
Ashley Medina, Ward 5.
Tanya Whitlow, Ward 4.
Janet Bowden, Ward 2.
Bruce Damon, Ward 1.
Megan Parks at large.
Jake Langley, Superintendent.
Karen Paquette, Assistant Superintendent.
And the Ward 3 rep Elizabeth Eames is excused this evening. Agenda item number 3 is the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that members would like set aside?
I just want to share, it's my understanding we need a couple of edits on attendance that member Hurd and member Bowden were not at the last meeting, but that member Damon was. I'd like to make those edits as part of the consent agenda.
Seeing no other items, we'll move ahead with that. The consent agenda being approved. Agenda item number 4 is public input. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items now and on agenda items later. Comments that pertain to staff, personnel matters, or a student issue should be directed to the superintendent or the appropriate staff member of Lewiston Public Schools. Public comments shall be directed to the school committee and be brief, not repetitive, and related to the matter at hand. Before starting, please state your name, address, and affiliation to Lewiston Public Schools. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on non-agenda items? Seeing none, we will move along. Number 5 would be the report from our student reps who are not here tonight. Agenda item number 6, to receive a presentation from the mock trial students.
So I'd like to ask Michelle Crowley to come up. She's the advisor. She's also provided a video for us, which I have downloaded. So whenever you want that queued up, please feel free to let me know. Thank you to all the students who came tonight.
Please hold for technical difficulties.
Am I holding it the whole time? Okay. So personally, for me, I joined mock trial when I was a sophomore, and going into it, I wasn't the best public speaker. I would get nervous in front of people. And mock trial, especially going to that nationals level, it really helped me come out of my shell. And it really, I can't even express how much it helped me with public speaking and being able to present to a lot of people. Also, really just being able to talk loudly and not be nervous when I'm talking to people. I mean, my mom literally just told me 2 minutes ago that I'm talking in front of you guys. Like, I have not prepared anything. But just being able to have a conversation and not getting nervous really when I have to talk to people. So that's really what's helped me the most. And now
Could you,
Eva.
could you tell us who you are?
Yeah, I'm Olivia Crowley. I'm going to be an upcoming senior this year.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ava Golder. This is my first year doing mock trial, and I would love to quote everything that Olivia said. It's really helped me with my public speaking, but also it's really helped me sort of like find my purpose as a person and find what I'm passionate about. You gotta help. During this whole experience, Miss Crowley has really helped me learn that I'm very passionate about law and very passionate about public service. So I'd just like to say thank you for that.
Do I need to press the button again? No. Okay. My name's Taylor Jean, and this was my first year doing mock trial. And I think the mock trial itself, but the national competition, just open your eyes to how many people there are and how many different people there are in the whole world. There's like, it's not just Maine, and it opened your eyes to just all the different experience and different people. And I was very thankful for that.
My name's Adri Viles. I would say, I learned a lot about other people at nationals, and I'd say that mock trial really helped me determine what career path I definitely want to focus on.
And what is that career path?
I want to major in either international relations or political science or even history. Either a diplomat, lawyer, or a history teacher. So, it helped me.
Hi, I'm Haley Aleniku, and it was also my first year doing mock trial, and I got a lot of public speaking while doing mock trial, and I feel like it helped me to open up more to people when I'm talking as well. And when going to nationals, you pick up a lot from other people, and it's good to bring back those lessons with us and skills. So.
Hello, my name is Ethan Rinko, and I'm going to go on my 3rd year of being in mock trial. During the national competition, I learned how to do lots of things. One which I think is very important is networking. I got to meet a lot of new people, coaches from everywhere around the world. And yeah, that's what really helped me out.
My name's Hayden Lecomte, and I think one thing Nationals did was it helped us get a better idea of what other teams are thinking, and it kind of opened up new ways of thinking about things. And it shows that there's always going to be a new way to incorporate things and just different ways to look at different situations.
Thank you all. Oh,
One more.
Okay.
I'm not a teenager. I started teaching at Lewiston High School in 1984. So next year will be my 40th year, which is pretty impossible. Michelle Crowley was one of my students. I wanted to say that since 1984, I have had the great good fortune to work with teens in the community and have seen this board in its many permutations support these teenagers over that time. I took not hundreds, but dozens and dozens and dozens of students to national competitions, from speech and debate to mock trial. And over the years, I've been able to keep in touch with them. We go out to lunch, we meet for drinks, which is kind of mind-blowing for me anyway. And they all have just taken the skills they've learned through debate, speech, mock trial, and use them to do incredible things. I can think of one right now who works for the State Department at the embassy in London. I can think of 2 professors with full tenure. I can think of a vice president with American Express who makes sure that they do diversity hires. The things that our students do are directly due to your support for them. So I'm just saying thank you.
Ms. Macri, would you identify yourself? Because some people may not know you.
My name is Joan Macri, and I taught history, economics, and debate at the high school until 2008. And since then, I've had the great good fortune to also help out with the mock trial team when they need people. So thank you.
Austin thinks it's going to be able to play it, share it, and play it here.
Thank you. Member Heard?
Thank you. So I have to say, that's very echoey.
Hold on.
So it's still.
Because I don't mind hearing myself speak. So first off, I just want to congratulate you and thank you for all the wonderful things you've done for the city of Lewiston. You are the future of Lewiston. We've got some amazing kids out here. Ava's on our youth advisory council. I will tell you that, you know, I am the city council president for the city of Lewiston. I was on the mock trial even before Miss Mackey was there, which shows you how old I am, for Lewiston High School also. So I'm very happy to hear you all say that you want to do those kinds of things. And I see you all as leaders of our community. And that makes me extremely happy and extremely proud. And somebody wore a Prince Purple Rain t-shirt. I am more than ever impressed. So thank you guys. Great job.
So I also wanted to say that watching you up there give your very impromptu speeches, I think I heard maybe one and one like, which is unheard of. I can't even talk in a full sentence without saying an or a like or a filler of some sort. So kudos to you, because that alone in itself is an amazing feat. And just that we're very proud of you, and hope and can't wait to see what else you guys come out with next year.
I know you guys are headed out, but really good job. We're very proud of you. Sorry, I was trying to fight with my audio so others could hear you. But we're very proud of the work you put in. I know it took a lot of preparation. I know a few of the students, and I know what Michelle and the other teams of professionals in the community that help with the training and the preparations on that. It takes a lot of stress, a lot of preparation, and you did a really good job. So congratulations and thank you.
Agenda item number 7 is to receive and discuss the academic focus time development process at LHS. And I think Principal Radke will present. Or Superintendent Langlis or somebody.
Yeah, Principal Radke is here, and I'm going to put up some slides.
I'll wait for the slides. Just as introduction, as he's pulling up slides, Jake asked me to come and just sort of explain our process of how we got to some changes in the schedule for the Bell schedule for next year, and the impact that has. So as soon as he pulls it up, we're good. There we go. So what we're putting in next year is something known as academic focus time, which is remediating and accelerating in real time. So we'll get into the details in a minute, but I wanted to just talk about how we got here. All right. Both staff and students had expressed some dissatisfaction with how we were doing remediation of standards with Ice Week, Mud Week, and summer school. And there was lots of opinions on it, but a number of challenges with it. One, that it wasn't necessarily being done by the teacher who had assigned the work originally, who was responsible for the student. Also, a time lag was involved. If you were trying to remediate something from October, your first shot at it might be as late as February when we get to Ice Week. Oftentimes, the faculty member helping a student remediate in Ice Week, Mud Week, or even during the summer school was not the teacher who they had. So there was an additional burden on teachers to come up with something for them to do to meet the standard. Significant time lags, between the missing the standard and the remediating the standard, and what we know about feedback is that the closer it is to the actual time something is assessed, the better off it is for students. We all know that, feedback in the moment is the best, but the closer it is to when we actually did the assignment, the better off we are. Just for some numbers right now, I have the summer school numbers that we have 305 students currently attending summer school. That's not the ones who are qualified, but attending. And so far I've remediated 238 credits as of today. Looks like they'll be able to remediate some more. So existing informal structures to remediate or make up missed work, including early arrival and staying after school, sort of traditional things that have happened, they present some issues of equity for students who need to get out of here, who are involved in co-curriculars, athletics, maybe they need to work to help their families. And there's also the fact that the teacher workday does end at 2:30. So those are all sort of some time constraints that factor into the thinking that went into, so how do we allow students an opportunity to remediate in real time during the regular school day?
Just a quick question. You
Sure.
may touch this later. I apologize if I'm cutting over that. I recall when I was principal at the high school, there being a challenge, especially for the mud and ice weeks, for teachers wanting prep time, which took away from a PLC. So the professional development schedule had to be changed, or things had to be omitted for trainings because people wanted prep time to get these things ready for students that they didn't know who was going to do it, who wasn't. And so it became this real crunch on staff right before February.
And we did that again this year prior to Ice Week and Mud Week. We put off other, I believe if you're going to ask teachers to do some work, you should give them the time to do it. And so we gave it to them, which meant some other things got backburnered for a little while. So that is true. Good observation. Thank you. Next. So how did we come to, what was the process for getting to where we're at right now? Well, first of all, back in October, we did what was known as a de-implementation survey for all staff. In other words, we just said to the whole staff in a broad survey, are there things that we're doing now that maybe we shouldn't be doing still? Or is there a different way to address the problem? Problems don't go away. So back in October, we did that. And that's where it really surfaced the dissatisfaction with the Ice Week, Mud Week, summer school process, as well as some concern about DA and how it was being used and how effective it was. And a chance to, do we want to expand it? Do we want to change its focus? That's because that was a chunk of time in the schedule that was easily identifiable. Students advocated for better processes during using our student government and through DA, wanted better processes to get help and stay on track. Was big feedback from the House of Representatives. Question.
Sorry, I just thinking, like, for the public watching, for some members that might not know, can you explain what DA is?
DA is a twice weekly advisory period. That current focus this past year has been on social emotional learning type issues, as well as some community building. So the students in the House of Representatives identified, ways, how can we stay on track a little bit better? December and February, content team leaders explored ways to include academic acceleration and remediation as part of the regular school week. So department heads, we sat down, said, okay, this is the information that's come to us from both students and staff. Are there some models we can look at that other schools use that might allow us to bring some of this time into the regular week? In March of 2023, we put out the concept that administration, in conjunction with the content team leaders, of having an AFT, an academic focus time, that's just built into the regular schedule, when all students know that they will be able to access a teacher, and equally, if not more important, all teachers know that a student is available. So if you need to take my history quiz, I can say, aha, I know next Wednesday during AFT, you can come in and make up that history quiz. So we shared that. Staff input was solicited. And we revised March and May. We revised those proposed March through May, revised those proposals based on the feedback. Worked with nutrition because something, as with any schedule change, it's going to impact lunches and breakfasts. Worked with LRTC, the information technology folks, and student services to look at, how might this impact things and how doable was it? On May 17th, we presented that work to the content team leaders and the administration to the staff with some very specific concrete schedules so that they could actually have something to react to, and then requested further feedback, which they gave us, and some preferences. In May of 2023, we shared that sort of finished product with the House of Representatives for student feedback and their questions. So if you get to the next slide, you'll see, what they were reacting to. One of which was a 4-lunch version of a daily schedule. The other was a 3-lunch version. We can do the 3-lunch version, and we will do the 3-lunch version next year, simply because we lose less instructional time by doing that. It was really a matter of how many seats do we have in the cafeteria, and are there other spaces where students can eat in order to accommodate 3 lunches. There's more than enough space in the existing cafeteria to do 3 lunches, so that's not going to be an issue. The way it would work is that on Mondays and Wednesdays every week, we would continue to start the day. You'll see that's a starting period with a DA and advisory activity. Tuesdays, Thursdays would be academic focus time. So that time would be specifically dedicated for students getting academic focus. The fourth Friday could be used for students to engage in things like meetings for the co-curriculars that they're involved in, as well as just general unstructured some study time. A lot of it is following the flex model that we see with the freshmen, where they have an opportunity to go visit teachers, and it's like dedicated time for that. So that's how we started off. The thinking is at this point that juniors and seniors, as they are now able to, would not need to be there if they don't have a reason on Tuesdays and Thursdays for AFT, if they're doing just fine. The teacher doesn't need to see them if they don't need to remediate anything. Come on in, for the first period of the day, and off you go. Just like right now, if they have a study hall, they don't need to be there first period of the day, and they can come in when they want to. Question? Yeah.
Sorry, I have a senior, so I just want to clarify that. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you're saying they don't need to be there at 7:45 in the morning?
If they are passing everything, if a teacher doesn't need to see them, if they haven't had an academic violation, if they haven't skipped a class, those sorts of things that we track. If attendance isn't an issue, then you have privileges just like you would right now if you requested them to not be
Like a
in
late
until-
arrival type.
Yep, late
Yeah,
arrival,
okay.
absolutely.
Wonderful, thank you.
Absolutely. So that's sort of the structure. So it looks like the 3-lunch version is what we can go with. Next slide. So staff reactions, right? One being, this is the worst idea anybody ever had, and 5 being, this is the best idea to hit public education. So, and as you can see, it's a pretty standard distribution. But of the 71 respondents, we're looking at 54 were, neutral or better, give it a try. Versus there are some who have strong opposition to it. And, that's about what you would expect on any survey of a major change in the schedule. Yes,
How many teachers were sent to the survey?
every single one,
Which is how many?
135.
So about 50% of the staff replied. Okay, thank you.
Yep. It was open for 10 days. Yep. Yeah, with several reminders sent out. So those who wanted to weigh in, express their opinions. Some feel so, but that's, fairly standard distribution. But the preponderance of staff members who responded were, let's move forward with this plan. So that's the basic outline. I don't think there's another slide. Is there, Jake? And I'm happy to answer questions after that. So questions, individual questions that people have.
Member Beauplan.
Yeah, I have several questions for Principal Radke, but I'm sorry. I have several questions for and clarifications needed from Principal Radke, but I believe there's somebody in the audience that would like to comment on this, so could I waive my time to?
We were gonna do a public comment after if that's fine.
I prefer the public comment now, so I can dovetail off
Comment
that
now, okay,
if I need to.
all right, we'll open up for public comment now.
My presentation is going to take about the same time as Mr. Radke, so if you want to do that, we can both answer questions, bounce them off, that'd be fine by me.
Okay, hang on.
Not like if you're running the show.
Member Whitlow, and then we'll come back to that.
Yeah, I just had a quick question, Mr.
Sure.
Radke. Was the survey that was sent to the teachers, was that sent during the summertime?
No,
That
no,
was-
no, no. This was all during, before the final.
Perfect, thank
It was
you.
right after we enrolled. We got two options here. It was done during the school year. It was done May.
Member Heard.
Thank you. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I know you said juniors and seniors, if they are doing what they need to do, they don't need to go. Freshmen and sophomores still have to attend.
Correct.
And so my only,
At this time.
at
we
this
can-
time,
We can
yeah.
look at it. We
So
can
we
look
can-
at, I'm
so-
oftentimes, it's sophomore year is a developmental piece that
Yes.
you gotta watch. Yeah.
So that was my only question, because I'm sure that you will have freshmen or sophomores who are caught up, who are doing what they need to do, seeing who they need to see, whatnot, and historically bored children tend to get themselves in trouble. Not that I say that any of
Yeah.
our students would, but I'm just saying, you know, is it an option to change that if you find that you have?
Nothing is ever set in stone.
Okay,
And I think that if things are going well, there's always individual case by case, special circumstances. And also, expanding, particularly in the sophomore year, as students sort of developmentally, take control of their lives, also as they learn and get driver's licenses, because transportation ceases to be an issue. So it's something absolutely worth looking at, as is, pretty much, timing of when the AFT period falls, because there were some different suggestions. So this is where we start. We'll revisit it every couple of months and say, is it working? Is it doing what we need it to do? And can we adjust?
Member Bowden.
Thank you. So this is obviously going to help people with credit recovery who are missing credits. Could just be a matter of a test, but it could be a lot more than that. So is there going to be enough time in this? It seems like a 45-minute window, right? Is that correct?
35, yeah.
35-minute window. Is there going to be enough time? Because I mean, we've certainly seen transcripts come through where, they're supposedly a junior or a senior going in with like very few credits. And so is there enough time in a school year, I guess, to recover for these kids to get them on the stage to graduate?
So that's a separate issue when we're looking at students with severe deficits that we are addressing, and I'm happy to speak to that at some point. We have at least 75 fourth-year students who look like they're not on track to graduate. Lots is being done, but this would not solve necessarily that problem. What this solves is, as students come up through, if they're missing one or two standards, on their way, so that they don't have to make it up in mud school. And so, if you get a big deficit, we have other things we can do. If you're down a class or two, or you're struggling in a class or two, that's what this is really intended for. Also, we always think on the students on the remediation end. It's also good for the students who want to accelerate, who are, generally speaking, highly motivated students who are taking rigorous courses will use this as well as an opportunity to meet with the calculus teacher, to meet with the anatomy and physiology teacher, to help clarify for them as well. So, it really sort of hits all across the academic spectrum.
Will Ice Week and Mud Week continue with this?
Currently, they're not. This is intended to replace those. On the never say never, let's see where we are at the end of the first semester. What do we need to understanding now? We also have semester summative weeks where students can remediate standards as well. So there are, where there weren't a lot of opportunities other than Ice Week or Mud Week and summer school. Now there's some built-in time. So, when students have transportation to the building, all teachers are there, and accessible. So let's see where we are, and we can reassess. I mean, it's part of the whole, nothing, one and done is not the style. Do something, evaluate, revise, move forward.
Member Bovelant?
Let me, thank you, and I left this on, my apologies. Let me give a little backstory for all of this. I had several constituents from Ward 7 and people outside of Ward 7 contact me on the enactment of academic focus time. And I assume they contacted me because I'm the teacher for 40+ years in the group. And while I do not want to infringe on John's authority and autonomy to set policy, and again, it's not a policy issue, I just am worried about some unintended consequences that may come up as a result of this. And part of it is my experience seeing this in another place at another time. And I like to really just give a couple forewarnings of this. Now, I appreciate that John, and agree with John from my experience, that Mud Week and Ice Week did not work. We just couldn't get the kids in there. And I appreciate the fact that John wants to increase instruction time, but I'm concerned, unintended consequence number 1, of combining 4 lunches into 3. Now, John, I hate to put you on the spot on this, but what is the capacity for a lunch room that is comfortable? How many kids can you fit?
We have over 400 seats in the cafeteria. We're probably looking at about a 300, 350 student lunch, depending on what they have going on during those periods. But yes.
Okay, and if you take the average 4-period lunch population and put it to 3-period lunch population, how much is it going to increase? What are we talking about numbers there?
Approximately between 50 and 75 more students per lunch.
Okay, my number 1 red flag is that when you have more congestion, you have more possible problems that could occur, discipline, fights, whatever. So I would don't want to go back to the day of lunch off campus, because that ended when somebody wrapped themselves around a tree. But the increased number of people in a lunchroom is a big concern of mine. Also, I'm concerned about the students that will benefit the most. I totally agree with you that the achieving oriented student that wants to turn that 93 to a 95 is going to go and get that to that teacher. But I'm also concerned about the malaise of many students that are not doing well, that I'm not going to worry about it. I'm worried that the students that we are targeting are not going to take advantage of it. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And I just see that they'll be, I'm passing, I don't need it. I'm in the back of the room with my telephone. And worse, I'll get out, but I won't report to where I'm supposed to go. That's a concern, and feel free to counter that or whatever.
I mean, the way it's constructed now is that within the first, you come in, you check in with your advisor, and then you go to the class, the teacher's room, where you are to remain for the rest of that whole period. You don't get, it's not a pass to wander, so it works just like an extra help, and then it's an enforcement issue for those of us charged with patrolling the halls to make sure kids are where they're supposed to.
Do we have enforcement issues with the DA periods? Are there students wandering the halls in the beginning of the day that cause assistant principals to not be able to do the other things they need to do?
Well, there's always in a school of 1,350 students, there are always a handful of students you are chasing all the time. And, I don't expect that will be radically different, but at the same time, you are now giving the students you aren't chasing an opportunity to engage in learning with the teacher who's most able to help them.
I just see many students possibly blowing this off. I don't think the target group, as I said, is the one that's going to benefit from it. I see increased tardies. I see increased truancies. I'm not really in agreement that it should occur at the beginning of the day. I like your point about senior late arrival. But I just see that it's going to be misused by the students, abused. Why could we not target those students and have them have a specific learning lab where they could work on that? Why could we not target it with, say, a freshman group and see how it goes? How are we going to determine if it's successful or not? What's the criteria for that? Could you?
Sure, fewer students need to remediate standards.
at the point of disrupting the whole schedule for the whole school with, again, I guess the big thing that I'm concerned with is the loss of the academic time. Seat time is the best indicator of student success. We got to get the students in there. We got to get their butts in the chair. We got to get them learning in education. And I just feel that, again, as I've said before, it's going to be a concern. I've always advocated for the legitimacy of a high school diploma, and I've always supported the idea of students being able to remediate. I teach adult ed and I'm familiar with the summer school, but I'm worried again that only a few will take advantage of that. The free time that the students will have may not be used productively. And I'll leave it here for now with a chance of interjecting if I think of something else. But thank you, John, for being here. I want you to know I wouldn't even say I'm the loyal opposition, and I'm not Nancy negative, but I just see a few red herrings in this based on my experiences, how it was used in another place and another time. Thank you.
Member Scott?
So I have great respect for Member Beaupoulant, but I kind of disagree on a couple of things, and I just want to put a couple of things out there. So 3 lunches versus 4 lunches. How early was the first lunch?
I could pull it, but
Do we
it
remember
will
what
be
time
later
it
in this
is?
schedule.
It will be later
Yeah.
with 3 lunches,
Because we
right?
have to
We had
allow time in that third lunch for the LRTC students to be there. So we,
Because one of the bigger issues that I've heard from parents and from students is that early lunch and the difficulty with being that they weren't ready for lunch then, but they were hungry later. And I think that that's something that has to be considered in this. So I'm actually in favor of 3 lunches versus 4 lunches. I think that it puts it closer to the lunchtime frame, and I'm a little more comfortable with that. In respect to the size of the lunchroom, is the multipurpose room still used? for
yeah, and that will
lunch
be
as
used.
overflow?
We're intending to use that when it's available, which is most of the time. We've already asked LRTC for a quiet lunchroom.
Yep.
For students for whom there's too much stimulation in a crowded lunch. So probably 75% of the time that will be available for overflow.
Okay. Because I think that's an important piece too. I know that that was used when I was in school. That was a lunchroom as part of for everybody to use. I think that it's a good idea, especially with where we have a lot more special needs students in our schools now, having a room that is a little bit more quiet than a room that is overflowing with students going, because it can get loud, is probably a really good way to move forward with that. This does include academic acceleration as well, correct?
Sure.
And I'm only going to speak from my experience with having 4 kids that have gone through Lewiston High School. My students were much more apt to work in the morning towards their acceleration or any remediation that they needed to have, particularly my son, who had to have significant remediation when his dad was in the hospital and he missed a significant amount of school time. Ice week and mud week did not work out well for him. He had a job, he was working, that didn't work out. I think if there would have been something like this, that would have helped him better. Now, he graduated from school, but I think a lot of that I attest to the superintendent knowing my family very well and knowing what we were going through and knowing that my son could accomplish those things if had he been more focused on school and not his now being the man of the family and trying to take care of his mom. But I think that was actually, this would have been a better fit to him in the morning, because by the end of the day, that boy wanted out of school and wasn't focusing at all for anything like that. So I'm just giving sort of playing the devil's advocate here on some of the other things that I'm speaking of from experience. I think that, when we look at something like this, I think it's, first off, I'd like to say that I think it's unfortunate that only 71 staff members responded out of staff of 135. I honestly, and I want to be very careful on how I say this. I think everybody should be responding. This is something, if you're a teacher at the high school, I would want to have responded to that, because this affects them, right? This is part of the decision-making and the scheduling that happens. And I think it's unfortunate that not all of them responded like I think that they should have, honestly. But I also think that I appreciate the fact that you look at this as a working program, as something that can be maybe fixed if it needs to be fixed, change if it needs to be changed, and be willing to take any kind of suggestions or comments from folks that have been teachers and stuff like that. So that's where I'm at right now. I may have more in a minute. Thank you.
Any other school committee members before I open up to the vote? Ms. Whitlow?
What is the percentage or the number of students that you see like every semester that needs all this remediation? Do you have a number out there?
Well, I was trying to pull those numbers together. Currently, we had 305 who signed up for summer school, which means they needed to remediate at least partially some of their standards. They had not passed a class, they had not met the standards in that class, and they had to go back. So that's the quickest number I can get for you. I can get a historical. I know we had, I think, about 150 students sign up for ICE Week. Not all of them showed up because they couldn't. So we're talking a fairly large number. As that's with 300 kids, mostly juniors and seniors right now who can see the end. My goal is that they not be in the position of having to take 5 classes in summer school to meet that 24 credit requirement. If you have a bad freshman year, you're
I think that seems extreme. Are we expecting that students will be trying to get 5 credits or 5 classes remediated in summer school, or
some kids? So it all depends. See, they have to. So understand that there's a grade limit. If you've got a 20, summer school is not an option for you. Because that's you can't do it. We're talking about students who are within spitting distance, 50 or better, who've got a shot at it. So some of them have done quite well, and some of them have, especially as I say, juniors and seniors, when they begin to see the end of the line, can manage to get some stuff knocked off, especially if they were in the 60, 50, 60 range, and they had maybe 4 or 5 standards, just a few things to do in each class. But they're in there working away.
Member Hurd and then Member Bowden.
Thank you. So I actually think this is a great idea. The whole point of high school is to prepare our students for the future when they're adults, and they are going to quickly find that there's no one there to hold their hand. So these students that go on to college, the professor has a time from this time to this time, and that's when you go and speak to your professor. Your boss isn't going to sit there and hold your hand when you work at your job. So I do think that we need to put responsibility back on the students, that they take responsibility. If they know they're missing something or there's something that they need to clean up, this is the time to do it. And there's no excuse. They can't come back and say, well, I didn't have time, or the teacher wasn't available, or I couldn't make it because of this, or the 100 other excuses that they have. I slept through my alarm, or I didn't have breakfast, or whatever. But I think it puts some responsibility back on them. And that's what we're preparing them for, is the future. And this is where it starts. Like, unfortunately, we can't hold their hands. We're not their parent. Their parents aren't going to hold their hands. So I think this is great. I'm excited. I hope you can come back after a little while. I don't know if we have plans for him to come back and give us a recap,
Sure.
what's going,
Yep.
feedback,
Happy to.
survey. I don't really know. But I would like to see like what people's thoughts are after a little while.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I would just sort of echo what Member Hurd just said, but I also want to kind of elaborate on how much communication with parents there's going to be. Like, if you've got students who absolutely need to take advantage of this, are you going to make that clear with their parents at the beginning of the year, or at whatever point it needs to happen? Like, by the way, this is available. Your student really needs to be here and figure this out. Like, I just want to make sure there's clear communication with parents on
Yes,
this.
there will be a barrage of information that comes, sort of 2 weeks out of school. There's also the expectation for staff that if they request a student come and remediate something, that they also include parents in that communication.
Wonderful.
So that they know that we've also, by the way, we've made some other adjustments in that, students have 2 weeks after they get something back to go remediate it. So they can't stack them up.
Mhm.
And there's also the expectation that staff will get work back to students within 2 weeks, so that we're trying to say it's not, and that was actually a student idea to put a 2-week window on how long they could to remediate. But yeah, so the expectation is email the student, tell the student, email the parent, and then you've got them on your team to get the student in to come remediate.
Awesome. Because, while I can appreciate what Member Beaupont had to say about students maybe not necessarily taking advantage of this program because they're in La La Land or whatever they're doing. But I just want to make sure that parents are involved and they understand how important this is. And, if we have everybody on board, then we're setting these kids up for success instead of failure. So I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page there. And I love to hear that.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Member Medina?
So first of all, thank you. I really appreciate the thought and the work that's gone into this. I do wish we did have more teachers respond. So I'm not feeling 100% supportive about getting rid of Mud Week and Ice Week, because I feel like some students really could, you take advantage of it. And in some cases, it's not always that, their parents aren't holding their hand. I mean, sometimes kids have some very serious things that are going on in their life that are, that's making it hard for them to be successful in school. So I do think communication with the student is very, very important. So if this isn't working out, maybe find another option. But also, I know another student, a few students actually that have told me that DA isn't always used for what it's intended to be used for. So I just think it's very important to make sure that that it's being used, how you're intending for it to be used. And I also do know another student that went to summer school and had maybe 3 assignments they had to do. They only went to the school for 3 days, which is, in this case, this is something that could be worked out in this. So yeah, I just wanted to express those thoughts. I'm really open-minded to it, and I love that you're going to keep your eye on it and let us know how it's going. Because if it's not working, then I just think that we need to, revisit the conversation. So.
Yeah, no, and as I say, it's always subject to constant evaluation. And, to your concern about Ice Week or Mud Week, there's always, no matter what system you construct, there's always a student that you need to look at individually and say, we got to do something different for this young person. And that's fine. We're trying to get the net as wide as we can. And then if there are some that we still need to work with, we're a public school. That's our moral responsibility, is to always find an on-ramp for every student, given their life circumstances.
Sorry, I don't know your name, but did you want to speak now?
Go.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Jude Lavasser, and I'm a math teacher at Lewiston High School. I'm a lifelong resident of Lewiston. I come before you this evening to explain the impact the AFT draft schedule will have on students and teachers. As a teacher, I carefully plan out my school year, and I rely on consistency. This past school year, months into the year, we were told we would bring back semester and final exams. And that was kind of a quick turnaround. And I just want to explain maybe one of the reasons why many teachers did not respond to the survey, because they maybe felt that it was a done deal, to be honest with you, talking to some of my colleagues. Because this semester and final exam, and I didn't come here to debate the validity of that. I just want to talk about some numbers. And I believe I emailed all of you a packet of my presentations. I didn't know if Superintendent Langless was going to put it up. You feel free. It's a PDF document. But these are just numbers and I think you all have a copy of it. So this past school year, we implemented semester and final exams, and I didn't come here to debate the value of validity of semester and final exams. I would only like to draw your attention to the resulting loss of student instructional time. I may refer to seat time as instructional time as well. The first page of my document that you have, to support semester exams and final exams, we lost 8 days for each, 8 teaching classes or instructional classes. So when we're reviewing for final exams or semester exams or taking final exams, those are not instructional days. Each class lost 8 classes, which amounted to a 9.2 decrease in class time compared to the previous year. The draft AFT schedule was brought to the faculty on May 16th or 17th, and it was kind of a shock to us when we saw this schedule. As a veteran math teacher, this will be, I'll be going on my 36th year teaching math. I looked at the numbers, and seat time for me, back when we went from everyday classes meeting every day to a block schedule, The assumption was that we could do with twice the amount of time, we could do twice like we did and the reality is that's not necessarily the case. So when we lose more seat time, I lose the ability to help kids learn and remediate. And there are many of us that remediate already during our class schedule, during the day. We make appointments with students during their study halls, and they come in and they can retake a test in the back of the room. So for me, being a freshman team teacher, Mr. Radke talked about flex. So let me just explain that to you. As a freshman team, there are 4 teams, but 3 that work on this flex schedule where every other day we have a study hall. And the 4 teachers in that team are side by each. We're right next, we each share a common wall. And so during that time, every other day, students can migrate between those 4 classes and remediate, get extra help. It's a great system. Only it doesn't work for sophomores, juniors, and seniors. But for me, my first year teaching on team was 2 years ago when I had 3 students that were off team due to scheduling conflicts. And that's how I would remediate with them. I'd meet them during their study hall, and then they would come see me during my flex when they could. So there are ways for it to work. But again, I worry that if we do the AFT schedule, we're going to be losing more seat time. So when I did my calculations for you, it was on a 4 lunch day schedule. To me, I talked to kids, and there are many kids that bag their own lunches, whether it's a peanut butter and jelly, just they don't have the time to go through the line. And when they do go through the line, many of these kids, they have 5 minutes to wolf down their lunch. So to go from 4 lunches to 3 lunches, I don't think, I personally, in talking to kids, I don't believe it's doable nutritionally. So there are many kids that bring their own lunch or don't eat lunch because waiting in that line takes so much time, they're not able to eat their food. I am hopeful we could spend this year revising the semester and final exam schedule because it did not go smoothly. It did not do what we thought it could do. It was used for remediation when most semester and final exam schedules are based on assessing what you've learned for the semester, either semester 1 and semester 2, or a combination of a final exam schedule. It was used to remediate standards. And we are not standards-based, we're standards referenced, and we still do end up putting through an average that either gets you above 70% or below 70%. So just to kind of, we reference the standards, but we're not standards-based. We're still doing percentages. So in a standard, you might have 8 assessments. Those get averaged, and that's your standard grade. So if you're failing that one standard that had all of those assessments, it's difficult to meet that standard. So we brought up this point of contention as faculty members that how could we do semester and final exams so they stood on their own, give them a percentage? And we're told that we couldn't do that. And I don't know if they've investigated that, but it's tough for us. I'm a math teacher. I've been a math teacher for 35 years. And for a kid to ask me, Ms. Lavassa, what do I got to get on that test to pass? I said, I'm not really sure. It's going to take me a while because in standard 1, I have 3 assessments. In standard 2, I have 2 assessments. In standard 3, I have 5 assessments. And I have an exam that assesses those 3 standards. So those first 20 questions assess a standard and it goes in as a regular quiz grade. Well, if that standard had really low quiz grades, the student's probably not going to get a great grade on that on the semester exam. That's just me thinking. Even if they do, it will not average out within that standard. So I don't think, for me, many teachers, as semester and final exams are for many people, they're difficult for students. And I don't want to debate that. All I want to say is that with implementing semester and final exams, we lost 16 student days to direct instruction. So each class, each math, science, English, history class lost 8 classes of instruction. So we're being asked to teach the same amount of material with 8 less classes. If this academic focus time goes in, I will lose another 9 classes. So for my regular Algebra 1 class from 2 years ago, I'll have 17 less days to accomplish the same task. So I would ask, and I'll go through a little bit further. So with the addition of the AFT schedule with a 4 lunch, we've lost approximately 11.4 decrease in class time from last year. So comparing the effect of both changes in the bottom of page 3 of my handout, we've lost approximately, 19.5%. So not to be a percent person, but if I had 5 classes, I've lost 1. So I'm being asked to do the same amount of instruction, remediation, and assessment. I had 5 days, and now I have 4 days. It's asking a lot of teachers. I'd like to talk to, just comment on a couple of things that Mr. Radke said. I think I'm a pretty talented teacher. If I was teaching sophomores or juniors and I had 3 different classes, it's asking a lot of me to try and schedule a kid to remediate the geometry, the Algebra 2, and the Algebra 1 in essence, a 30-minute period. Say I have 2 kids from each class. Am I remediating? Am I reassessing? My assessments take between 50 and 60 minutes. Kid's not going to get a reassessment done in 25, 30 minutes. It also does not leave time for me to remediate. Why would I want to give a kid a reassessment when I haven't worked with that child to try and fill in their missing ideas? I worry that this is the second major change. A lot of my colleagues do too. This is the second major change in 2 years. I believe we need a lot of work to be done with semester and final exams to do what maybe we think they can do or what they should do. And I would still put it out there. What has been done with Power School, looking to see if we can put a percentage on those semester and final exams so they would represent kind of a good practice for kids going on to college. Let's have a couple more comments. Please bear with me. I appreciate your time. So in some of the documents that Principal Radke gave to us explaining what was going on, one of my first suggestions, I was one of the first people to raise my hand, and I said, well, how about we could have maybe a late bus? That used to be a pretty good idea in the past. And the response was, it's a non-starter, we can't do that. So I was thinking, could the money saved supporting ice and mud week be used to try and get a late bus? And maybe it doesn't go through Hudson bus lines. Maybe we get a retired bus driver and we do it but there are other ways than remediating during the school day. It just kills me that I'm going to have not much longer than I had when we met each class every single day. And we now have DA twice a week. And they're the worst transitions. So we have an extra transition. And I will tell you, I've seen assistant principals running after kids in the hallway because they're not in their DA. They can be written up. They don't go to DA. They roam around. So we have 2 of those a week. We're going to now have 5 of those a week. I don't know how we're going to magically stop that from kids that just don't want to be there because it's non-instructional time. In supporting documents, there is a proposal to put more students in each DA because we're going to need people outside to monitor and police the kids that aren't in DA. It also says that we're going to mix up DAs. So we're going to have freshmen, sophomores, and juniors and seniors maybe all in the same DA because we need to rearrange this. Well, I'll tell you, I come from a school that I taught at for 3 years, Miranda, it's built on this community advisor. They live it. We're a very large school and we're trying to get to that. But DA, I came new in 2 years ago and I had a sophomore DA. I believe the role of DA is to get to know a kid, to be like a pseudo guidance counselor, to help them through it. I work with 12 kids. I form relationships different than in my classroom. How am I going to do that with 15 or 20? So we have to increase the numbers. I worry that this is going to look good but the effectiveness of maybe getting an extra 25 minutes twice a week will cause such a cluster of attendance issues in the morning. We have an issue now with attendance issues in the morning. I think DA worked best the 2 times it did in the middle of the day. I think that this remediation time needs more thought, more planning, the entire faculty. We probably meet maybe 5 times a year as an entire faculty. Yeah, we have a big faculty, but we're split up in 2 different sessions. Some administrators hear what Group A has to say, and other administrators hear what Group B has to say. There are so many miscommunications that don't allow us to maybe bring forth other good suggestions, because we were given this AFT draft and a month later, we said, this is what we're going to do. I think many teachers were just frustrated. A couple more things, and then I will take any of your questions. Students who are not in need of remediation may see this as an opportunity to come in 30 minutes later every day. Unless you got to take the bus, right? Mom and dad brings you in, sleep in. Class doesn't start till 8:25. The complexity as a teacher. So at Marana Cook, they had what they called tag time. They had this electronic way of doing it. They did it every single day. And it was tedious for 10 kids. I don't know how I'm going to be able to do it for the 100 kids on my caseload. Try and keep track of it, to schedule them, make sure they come back. I think I'm going to be writing up more detentions for all these tardies and kids. Geez, I sent you an email. You're supposed to come see me for mediation. I missed it. We'll be in attendance. We'll be, in essence, taking attendance twice in that first 45-minute period. Now, I'm a math teacher. I don't want to be taking attendance when I don't have to. You know what I mean? It's a waste of instructional time, a waste of my expertise, I think. One last thing, and I was jotting down a couple of questions that I just beg of you. I know that this is not a policy you need to vote on, but I beg of you for us to take a year as a faculty, with administration, with Superintendent Langlis, with yourselves, to study this AFT plan. It does have some positives. As written, it is a solution to a problem that it's not solving. There are too many shortfalls in it. And I think the loss of instructional time for 100% of our kids is not worth an experiment that might work. Because right off the bat, you've got these freshmen coming in to a totally new system. These freshmen that now have become sophomores, geez, they had to get through semester and final exams. I would like us to really, really spend this year working on semester and final exams and really tighten that up. And if we as a school district want to spend that time, that 16 days of lost instructional time to support this, let's do it best. But I can't see us losing 18 more total class days to support AFT on a hope that it might work. I think there's not enough people that have put enough information into this to make me feel comfortable. I'm going to do whatever I have to do. But this additional lack of teaching time, it threw me for a loop last year. October, November, yeah, we're going to give semester and final exams. I've done this before. I know I just lost 4 weeks of instruction, not planning on that. So I had things scheduled out for that. I don't really know what's going to happen with this, and neither do a lot of teachers. How does that affect my planning? How much can I do? And eventually you see the domino effect, because we spiral learning. If I don't get to as much material, then the geometry teacher sees this kid and it's the first time they see these topics. And instead of being the second time to review. I don't want to overstay my
We have some members that have questions for you.
Yes.
Member Bowden.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess where I want to start is, do you know off the top of your head, or maybe this is a question for Principal Radke, how many freshmen were a part of Mud, Ice, and Summer?
I don't, but could I address that? We have many safety nets,
Okay.
but we have a 10-day period that says you have to redo these assessments. You have to retake them within 10 days. Yet you can go on to Ice Week. And then maybe you can do them on the exams instead of doing that. And maybe you can do it in mud week, or maybe you can do it during the final exams, because when we talk about standards, there are some standards that go back to semester one that may have been addressed in my final exam. So that goes back to, I mean, it's far reaching doing the grading the way we do. I do not know how many freshmen went to ice and mud week.
Okay.
I don't have any of those statistics.
All right. I just, from what I heard from you, this is what I'm hearing, is that it sounds like you and the freshman teams have a good setup going with
The
your
best.
flex. Okay.
The best.
And you feel like your credit recovery with the freshmen is like a well-oiled wheel at this point, and you kind of feel like,
If I didn't think it wasn't, I wouldn't have stayed there. I would have bid for another job within the high school.
okay.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my question. So are you looking to us, are you pleading your case to see if we can exclude freshmen from AFT? Or are you asking us to re-examine this as a whole, like the whole high school?
As a whole, because I don't think, I hope that I brought up some issues of just a loss of seat time for 100% of our kids.
Right, but if
To help us, maybe 20% remediate.
I'm just looking at it like, it sounds like the freshmen have flex. They have that study hall where you guys are able to work that out, but that doesn't sound like that's the case for
Oh, yes.
sophomore, junior, seniors. Okay. And so that's where I see value in the AFT, especially in the older group. But, you know, if Principal Radke is open to it and, you know, this isn't all set in stone, right? Like
Yeah.
we keep
Well,
hearing this.
I think it may be, and that's why. So on the presentation that was given to us, Mr. Radke is supporting it. It has Superintendent Langlis' support. I had nowhere else to go. I tried before and say, look, I think this is going to kill us.
Yeah.
But you were the only people I had to come to. I always vote for Member Damon. And I know you guys have spent so much time and effort to support our schools, and you care about this. And I think as a parent, if I'm a parent of a student who's academically on the ball, I'm seeing this as you're not letting my kid get as much as they can from a teacher. You can say whatever you want, but seat time with a teacher is more important than the remediation afterwards. If you take away seat time, you will find that you will need to remediate more.
Okay. No, I appreciate the information that you gave us. It just, obviously you're a freshman teacher, and so it just sounds,
I've taught AP
fresh-
calculus, yeah,
Sure.
I've taught everybody, but
It just sounded freshman centered. So I just wanted to like get a clear understanding. And I also wanted to ask, when you're talking about losing days for midterms and final exams, and I know it was just implemented this year. My experience in high school with midterms was you get halfway through the year and you take a test on what you've learned halfway through the year. And then as a final exam, it's just a modge podge of different things that you've learned throughout the year to just test to see where you're at. Like, you should be able to pass this because you've been in this class the whole year. Like, so I don't understand why we're losing days of instructional time and seat time for midterms and exams when it should just be an exam halfway through and then a final exam. Like,
well, I'm comparing that to the previous year, 2021-22, there were not semester. I believe there have not been semester and final exams in this district for approximately 10 years.
yeah. And yeah.
Yeah, so I taught with several teachers this year who are Lewiston graduates, went to college, became educators, and I'm teaching with them. They didn't know what a high school semester or final exam is. They'd never had one. They were being asked to construct these kind of last minute. But they're not necessarily, this is what we're asking for. We're asking for 10% of their grade, or maybe 20%. A lot of schools go 20% with those. And they said, no, we can't do that. We're not doing that. So the semester exam was not being used for the traditional purpose that you would see in college or what you had in high school.
Any other questions? Member Whitlow.
I didn't take any notes, so I don't know what's gonna come out of my mouth, Mr. Lavasser. Thank you for being here. I could sit and listen to you for quite a while because I have had concerns. I've been a big advocate for getting rid of ice and mud week because I feel like we need to hold our children accountable. And if you continue to give them options and over and over and over, it's not helping them become productive citizens as they get older, and to be able to land a job and be able to do it right the first time, and not, if you're not taught to study and do your homework and pass a test, then what are you going to do when you have to find a job and be accountable? So I hear you, and I agree. And this brings me back to the whole grading system with the standards and the percentage of this standard, and drives me insane. And I know that the superintendent is probably giving me a glare right now, because we were part of that whole escapade 6 years ago when we had to do this, and I was the only one opposed to it. There's just so much about what we're doing right now that is like, I know that our intentions are so good of what we want to do for our students and giving them options. We want them to pass, right? We want them to graduate. But that doesn't mean that we have to just give them options over and over and over. Like, we have to have some type of a structure. And the seat time, losing seat time, I agree is not the way to do it. And I'm a big component of communication with students and teachers. If you're not doing so well in a class, reach out to your teacher. Your teacher's never going to say, no, I'm not going to help you pass your class. Or if a kid is identified as special education, they're going to have the ability to get help and all that. And so for me, I'm hearing everything you're saying. I agree with it. But and I also understand the superintendent and the principals wanting to come up with an option to help, but I don't know if this is necessarily the right avenue. I didn't know much about what was going on with this until tonight. So I'm glad we've had a good conversation. And Mr. Beauplant, you were very strong about getting this presentation and having a good discussion. There's a lot. I've been on this board. This is my 6th year. I've seen a lot. There's a few of us up here who've seen a lot. And I just don't know if we are doing the best for our children right now. There has to be accountability. Even with my own children, there is no accountability. And no matter how hard we try to say, you've got to get your schoolwork done, you've got to pass, you've got to study, why aren't you studying? Like, it's like banging your head off the table every day during the school year, because they've never been taught in school how to be accountable, doing what you're supposed to be doing what's asked of you. There's always special circumstances where students can get help anytime, having conversations with administrators, teachers, to say, I just can't do the regular class right now. There's always going to be those options. But for the most part, what we need accountability, and we need them to be able to do the job when they've been asked to do the job and their homework and take the test. I am so scared to see just even my own children, what's going to happen when they graduate. There's just so much that we're seeing in our community, and it scares me. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Beauplant.
First of all, Member Parks, I'd like to thank you for waiving the 3-minute presentation on that. And I'd like to thank Mr. Lavassa for a very erudite presentation. If we were in Great Britain, I would have been saying here, here. Again, I wear my emotions on the sleeve. I have one concern and 3 predictions that I hope don't happen, but again, the unintended consequences. First of all, my concern is the less instruction. Again, I've got you by a few years in the classroom, and I would not argue that at all. I see increased lunchroom disruptions because of the increased size. I'm concerned that many students will blow this off in several ways. There'll be an increase in tardies. Well, I really don't need this. I can again blow it off. There'll be increase in truancies and absences. I missed side. I'll sleep in today. And the big thing that I see that has been the source of many of our executive sessions is roaming the halls. Students that are going to go from point A to point B, but Lewiston High School is a big school and they'll just be distracted, shall we say, or not get where they're supposed to be. I'm concerned about the hall monitors, if we have them, period one. I'm certainly concerned for assistant principals that are going to have to try to track these kids. But again, thank you. And loyal opposition, Mr. Radke. Thank you.
Member Bowden.
Thank you. So I guess the final thing I want to ask, I guess, is to Principal Radke. Could you possibly take a look at whether or not freshman flex and this AFT is necessary? Is there a way to eliminate one or the other from the freshmen? Just in an attempt to get more seat time for them?
I would be really reluctant to take anything away from the freshman that's working, which we know flex is working. And, you know, the curse of a large school is that I see this as more time in flex for them, you know, and I don't want to take, I'd prefer to have them included and increase their opportunity to work with their teachers even more than they do right now in flex, rather than sort of exempt them out of it or try and balance it. I mean, that's it. The nature of a large organization is, you know, the ability to fine tune decreases with size. So we have looked at it. Clearly flex is valuable. Everybody feels flex is valuable. Kids feel, parents feel, teachers feel. So I see this as at least they're getting another almost hour's worth of opportunity to do flex activities with their core teachers or the teachers who aren't on team. So that's the other piece. Like flex works with the 4 core teachers. If you're taking a language, if you're taking music, if you're taking something else, you can't use that flex time necessarily to meet with them. This time you could. Clarify.
Member Damon.
Mr. Radke, now this is kind of probably more of a theoretical question, but do you think that this is really going to help us get the kids back on track after having lost 2.5 years to the pandemic? I realize this is an entirely different situation than we've ever had before, but I'm assuming that some of this remediation is a direct result of that. Is that accurate?
Well, so what I would say is it's certainly not going to hurt helping get them on track. We know that our students, not just ours, every student in the United States is trailing, economically disadvantaged students trailing even more, at least 1.5 years behind. It was the last, I believe I saw in a New York Times article. This gives us additional time to do targeted individualized work with students. If there is a specific isolated deficit that we can find, certainly, you know, I don't see it as a loss of instructional time. I see it as different instructional time, you know, and we can debate that definition, but this is a time for students to be working with the adult who's expert in the field. And it's, you know, in my world, I would love it if every kid in the high school had flex, but we're not teamed, you know, 9-12. There's a lot of problems with that. This gets us part of that way. So, you know, I think that one thing is clear, our kids struggle, and that's not new. They struggled before COVID. They struggled during COVID, and they're struggling now. So unless we make some alterations and some changes and see how they impact, you know, we're probably going to be guaranteed the same result.
I guess one of the questions I would have is, do we know of any other school districts in southern and central Maine that are using this AFT model?
Oh, sure. Falmouth uses it. Yarmouth uses it. I believe Casco Bay High School uses it. It's fairly standard to have they call it a bunch of different things. Academic focus time is one name, but it happens in a bunch of other places. Some places have it every day. So it's not a new idea. It's new to Lewiston.
Are those schools also using the semester and finals as a measure of their?
So semester summative assessments, I need to be clear. Nobody was told to give a final exam. Everybody was said, we need you to do something with that chunk of time that evaluates at least 2 or more standards for students. Now, that looked very different in a number of different classrooms. For some, it was in fact your standard exam as you and I would know it. In other classes, it was an opportunity for some intensive group work and remediation. So it was really pretty varied. It wasn't given an exam. And I think that, that was something that the department heads decided they wanted to pursue back in October, was bringing that opportunity to bring, have a solidification period at the end of first semester and second semester. I've always taught and worked in a school that had a time in the mid-year when you compiled and synthesized, and a time at the end of the year when you compiled and synthesized. That was every school I went to, every school I taught at, every school I was an administrator at.
Well, thank you. I guess that, and while change is always difficult, obviously, like you said, if we don't change up something, we're going to end up with the same result we got now, which is not the thing that I think we're all working toward. I think the additional pathways and the additional opportunity for kids to succeed. And I think we've talked about Mud Week and Ice Week and all this, and I'm like a lot of the folks up here. I don't support it. I think it's a waste of time. I think it's probably one of the things that we probably should have killed off years ago, but I wasn't here years ago. I've only been here a couple of times. But I would be in support of you making the attempt, as long as it's measured and metric properly. And if it's obvious that halfway through the year, this thing is a bomb, then we need to change it up.
Member Wilhelm?
John, when you were in the planning stage on this, it said in your work that you had content heads. Are those the old department chairs?
Yes, content team leaders, formerly known as department heads, yes.
And I assume they received input from their people in their respective departments. Do you remember, was there any opposition voiced by some of the department chairs on some of the things we've talked about?
So throughout, every time we solicited feedback in whatever channels, there was always voice given to those who were skeptical or who had concerns, and adjustments were made, in order to accommodate some of those as best we could. But it was also clear in those meetings that the instructional leaders in the school, there were some concerns, but let's move forward.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we avoid groupthink, where you're familiar with that sociological term. Everybody says, great idea, boss, great idea, because I don't want to be looked at as the odd man out.
No, and there were plenty of people who were very clear and specific and gave helpful feedback about why they were not happy with what was going on. And that was, written down in the surveys, and every survey got read and considered. So it was a highly deliberative process.
Thank you.
I just wanted, Mr. Lavasser, I just wanted to let you know, I looked at the email and it looks like you sent it to LPS superintendent at Lewiston Public Schools. I don't know what email address that is, and the superintendent didn't receive it at that email address. So I just forwarded your stuff to him, but he hadn't seen it prior to.
It was the link that was on the website.
Oh,
I
okay.
clicked on it and copy and
It
paste.
doesn't forward to you though?
No.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's all right. I just wanted to let you know in case you send something in the future that
Yeah.
you may not get it.
2 comments, and I'll thank you for your time. The off-team teachers in Flex for freshmen, we've got a good gig going. So we communicate, they write a pass, they're in Flex, they go see him. They go see Mr. Kodamash, Mr. Corshane. So as far as off-team teachers during Flex, freshman team has a pretty good job at getting that taken care of. I guess I will, I won't get on my knees and beg you, but I beg that we, that you can maybe hold this off for a year for more discussions. I think that experimenting with 1,350 kids with 100% of their seat time being lost, it's not a great experiment. But if things Member Damon, you said that, we can try it, and these freshmen, a quarter of our population, come in. We get a freshman team to transition them, and we'd like to have some consistency. So if this does need to get upheaved and changed, it just makes their freshman year that much more difficult. But I would ask that you would ask for do some kind of committee meeting to have a better setup of what might is the beginning of a good program. But as written, I believe it will cost us too much in lost instructional time. Thank you so much for your time. I'm long-winded. I apologize, but thank you so much. Thank you so much for all your hard work.
Thank you. Superintendent Langlis?
Oh, that mic is still on if you want to just hit that button. I don't want to open Pandora's box. I know we spent a fair amount of time on this. I struggle with the word seat time. Instructionally, if you got it, you got it. If you're struggling to get it, you need more time and practice and support to get to that place where you got it. Seat time is not a definition on a knowledge or a skill set or what you have learned, what you know, and what you're able to do. I don't want to dive into that for long hours in this moment, but I'd love to at some other time. And the standards reference grades piece is a hard topic, I think, because what we're trying to figure out is what does a student actually know? And so if they get the 65 and then they have to go to summer school, what do? If we don't have anything to reference, we just give them stuff and they come in on a hot day and they sit down and do the thing and then they leave, no better prepared for the real world or with specific skills and knowledge set. And that is a problem for me. I think we're better than that, and we need to have those standards referenced. The other thing I want to just share is teachers have autonomy in the grade book. There might be a couple of steps they have to take to change a grade to make sure it gets to guidance and that is stored appropriately. But if instructionally, if I'm teaching and that student has demonstrated that standard to me, the other averages from the failures can be overridden, can be replaced, can be scored to be accurate for what the student knows and what they're able to do, and not just carry an average. There's opportunity in that. The hard thing with averaging, as you all know from the world of proficiency-based learning, was people didn't understand what the 1, 2, 3, 4 was. And so, and I get that. And that was a big shift in education as a whole, not just Lewiston. But in trying to fix that, but also still being able to reference what does a kid actually know and what are they able to do using standards, we went to this percentage system that spit out grades that people understood, kids and adults. And so that's how we got to that place. We want to have a conversation about going straight 1 to 4. I'm all ears, and I don't think we want to do that right now, but I just want people to remember that that's how we got to that place. It was so that we would have numbers that people would understand what that means progressionally or from a place of progression. I don't think progressionally is even a word. But just to remember that there's some history behind how we got to those places. But I also I'm looking at models elsewhere, and there's lots of research around this, whether it's win time, whether it's AFT, whether it's flex. We're finding that kids today, the way in which they learn has shifted. And so we have to try things to meet our most vulnerable. You've heard me say that 100 times. And right now, the seat time, and here's the curriculum, and let's go. But I do appreciate the accountability piece. We can't just keep spoon feeding everyone and just give them 10 opportunities to do things. But the seat time, and let's crank through this, is not working to the point that we have, our graduation percentage is in the 70s. Right. And it's a challenge that we have, and we get excited for the August graduation, which is coming up pretty soon. It's a wonderful moment for kids who needed more time, more support, more whatever. But those kids are getting there. And it's because of the structures and the systems that if we're preparing kids for the rest of their lives, they have to endure, they have to be resilient, they have to actually get it done at some point, even if it takes longer with different supports. But if they don't get that credential in today's world, they're in a lot of trouble. It's not just a graduation rate. It's 25 kids out of every 100 that are on the street going, I can't even get a job because I don't have a high school diploma. That's bad for our community. So I appreciate the supports, and I've known Jude for multiple years. I appreciate him greatly, and he's always shared a number of things from perspectives that I both know and understand, and some that I had to look in on. So I thank you for taking the time to message things and look at the numbers. we have to focus on the accountability. We have to track this stuff and provide more input to see how this is going so we can iterate this process. But right now, it's just not working for a lot of kids. And so we're trying to figure that out. Again, I don't want to dive into rabbit holes and spend hours on it, but I could. But looks like
Ms. Rich, yep.
Hi, thank you. I'll be very quick. Jay Rich, I'm the president of the Lewiston Education Association. I'm also an ML teacher at McMahon. I quickly just wanted to say that I appreciate that the district is looking at different ways to help remediate students. My big concern is that LPS has a lot of initiatives. We have SIOP going on district-wide right now, finals starting, and this is a lot on educators' plates and also students, you know, trying to juggle like, what is my schedule going to look like this year as opposed to last year. So I would urge caution with this and that we really make sure that it's fleshed out and that we're not just putting another thing on our students. My hope is that it is very successful in whatever initiative we do have. But again, I'm also concerned that it might turn into 35 minutes that students blow off. Because I'm thinking about myself as a teenager and how, you know, in the morning I might not want to participate in things like that. But I do appreciate the district and Principal Radke in agreeing to adapt, willingness to revise as needed. So thank you.
Thank you. Are we ready to move on? All right, agenda. Oh, sorry. There's no motion on the agenda, so you would have to suspend the rules in order to make a motion.
Okay, I'm not familiar with the particulars. Thank you. Yeah, I make a motion to suspend the rules to make a motion.
Yes. Does anyone second the motion to suspend the rules?
I'll second it.
Seconded by member Damon. All in favor? And opposed? 2, 3, 4, 5 to 3. The motion fails. Ashley, Bruce. Member Bohlat.
Thank you. With all love and respect for my fellow board members, it would have been nice to at least to be able to hear what my motion was, and then you would have had the freedom to vote it down, but I love you anyways.
I apologize. Historically, suspending the rules has been really controversial, so I have a hard time voting in favor of that. It's nothing against you or your motion. It's just a difficult thing for me to support because of, thank you.
It's difficult for you to support, it's difficult for me to second, but
Agenda item number 8 is to continue the discussion regarding restrooms at Lewiston High School. I'm sorry, Linda, did you have something? I didn't see your hand.
No, I was just going to suggest.
Mike.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I was just going to suggest to Paul, I know that that's disappointing to see that, but there has been issues with suspending of the rules, not only on the school committee level, but on other levels as well. And I would suggest if I been chair, was to speak to the chair to have it added. You can have that added to the agenda so that we can actually have an actual conversation around a motion that you may feel needs to be made around this particular issue, where this issue was just a presentation to us. And it also gives time for the community and maybe other teachers to come and speak to us that might be concerned about this, where we didn't have that tonight. I appreciate Mr. Labasser coming to speak to us this evening and taking the time to do that. But I would hope that you would understand that there's other ways that can be done. And I would suggest that you move forward that way, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
So our next item was to just continue discussion regarding restrooms at the high school. Principal Radke's here again to help have a conversation around that, but I did share in my my memo, we tried to chase some things down to get new quotes. The hardest thing I think right now is some of these tech companies and what their availability is, and also cost, which I mentioned in here, but there's also some other items, ideas, but I'll give Principal Radke a chance to discuss some of those, and I'll.
Your memo was covered most of it, so I'm happy to answer questions. The key thing is, we will continue to monitor bathrooms as we can with human resources, but we don't have the number of we can't station somebody in every bathroom at every period. So, there's that, and they will continue to be open. We will be opening the C wing bathrooms between classes, and teachers always have the ability to come in and open those bathrooms for bathroom break for the class, which is increasingly what's happening. Teachers will take a break, during the class and let everybody down there to do their thing. At this point, the biggest challenge, would be the cost around vape detectors, which are incredibly effective. That I know from peer communities, and virtually every district has gone that route to some extent, just because you don't have the manpower. Nobody has the manpower to police it. But the numbers were, the numbers are big. Middle school, high school, Minuteman, the Halo system's 165,000. Vercada, which is the other major player, and the districts around us, 50-50. We surveyed them. That's 125,000. And those come with, Bill may know the details more, but I believe those come with like 10-year licenses, because the detector is one thing, but what the power in it is that it connects with our current Vigilon camera system, so that if not only is there an audible alarm that says there's vaping occurring in this bathroom, but then it timestamps it on the video, so we know who's there. Particularly important with the individual bathrooms that we have, so unintended consequences, right? We have these wonderful individual bathrooms in the D wing that students can camp out in, and it's very tough to monitor unless you're literally having somebody sitting there with a stopwatch, what's going on. So this would help to alleviate that. But that's Jake's memo covered most of it. I'm happy to answer any specific questions. And it's as the bids came in, they were for both middle school and high school combined, because to be honest, it's a middle school problem as well. So I'll leave it at that.
I just want to add that we have included this in some of these opportunities for grants that we've written for surveillance and monitoring and safety. So we don't have all those back yet. We know some that we didn't get, but there's still some out there that we may get. If the money shows up, we'll certainly bring it right back to you, but we'll at least give you a status on where that's at. And I don't see the funds in the budget currently to reappropriate or to move things around to make that kind of investment, at least not at this time.
Principal Radke, is it possible, I know you just said like certain bathrooms will be open at certain times. Is it possible when the students get their schedule on orientation day that it lists like during this period, this bathroom will be open? Because I know a lot of the kids report, well, there's no bathrooms open, but it may just be the fact that there's no bathrooms open in the general area where their classes are. So if they had like something attached to their
You
schedule.
can certainly say always open during lunch.
Right.
That's certainly doable. Open by teacher.
Yeah.
Your teacher has the key.
I think that would be really helpful.
Yep, happy to do it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Member Hurd?
Thank you. For our individual bathrooms, I know you said it's hard to keep track and monitor and those types of things. Would there be a possibility, all of our students get like a identification card or something, right? If we did like, key
Tap in,
access,
tap out.
so
Yeah.
then you know who's using it, how long they're in there, and
Yeah, no,
then,
and
I mean,
so
what's the cost of something like that?
Mark Rook is working on that. We actually wanted to, that was one application for it, but also lunch, when you scan your lunch numbers, when you check in for the day, it could easily be set up to do attendance in a classroom if you wanted to do it that way. If you needed to leave on a pass, there's all kinds, once you have that RFID chip in your ID. And interestingly enough, it was students who were most in favor of that. They saw it as, I guess they see every adult in every building walking around with an ID tag, so that's not an issue for them. So he's looking at options initially. You want to, there's a hardware piece to all of that as well. We can't track them like a trans pass or an easy pass. That's a much more expensive chip. It's doable, but I don't think we want to quite go that far. But that also is, you got to have the pad at the door or whatever. So those are Mark's looking into that. Initially, just with the upgrade in the lunch, the new lunch system is totally compatible with that sort of an application. as we could make our, kids coming in late, attendance. So that's in the works. I haven't seen the prices. I know he's working on it.
Any other questions?
Just real quick, when he references Mark, he's talking about our
Sorry.
IT director.
Sorry,
Mark-
yeah,
Mark
sorry.
Rowe.
Mark Rowe.
Member Scott.
I just ask that we be kept updated on this.
Yeah.
I know that we had a great presentation by students last year talking about some of the issues. I think we need to definitely take into consideration all the things that they told us, especially the female students that came and said that, it's difficulty. That I think the idea that our chair had of some sort of notification that the students understand which bathrooms are open are highly important.
Yep.
But I'd also like to hear more, and hopefully when our student rep gets back in September, we can start hearing and maybe even addressing to them to really try to find out what's happening and what's going on in the bathrooms. And it wasn't just the vaping. There was
No.
other things too.
Oh, no,
There's many other issues that
it-
were happening here. And it was the students that were addressing this to us, that were telling us, and that they were the ones that were concerned about the people that were just hanging out in there. It
Yep.
made them uncomfortable going into the bathroom
No,
because of the other students that were, I hate to use the word, but slacking off.
Yep.
Right?
No, absolutely. It's a place that's, that's easy to hide. If you're a female student, you know that the principal's not going to poke his head in. If you're a male student, Becca Schuval's not going to poke her head into the boys' bathroom, but we check them every time we go past. But, you squeeze that donut, they find the next place to go. But, I fully agree. And to be honest, that's where some of our altercations intentionally are scheduled for bathrooms because they know that there's not going to be an adult there. So.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Agenda item number 9 is to review and potentially vote on the first read for policies listed A through M. A through M. Is there a motion? Moved by member Scott, seconded by member Hurd. All in favor? And Tanya stepped out of the room. Member Beauplan, are you, okay, and Tanya is abstained because she's out of the room? Okay. All right, 7-1. Agenda item number 10 is to review and potentially vote on the deletion of the following policy, which is ADC-R, tobacco regulations, K through 12 students. Did you want to speak to that or? Sorry, I'm going faster than you are.
Let's see. This one was one that it's not that it's going away. It's just something that doesn't necessarily need to be in the policy manual. It's something that would be in a student handbook as a procedure, not necessarily needing to be in the policy manual.
Is there a motion? Member Bowden?
I'll make the motion to delete the following policy, ADC-R.
Thank you. Seconded by member Hurd. All in favor? 7-1 again. Okay. Agenda item number 11 is to receive and potentially vote on the school committee meeting schedule for the 23-24 school year.
So no surprises here. Actually, what happened is we were looking up at the calendars for this coming school year, starting to plug in all of our other meetings. And we said, well, wait a minute, the school committee meetings aren't in here yet. And so I worked with Cheryl on some things. I talked to City about some things. We do have an inauguration this year. You'll see that in your memo as a to be announced date. I just want to make sure we have the right date on that. But short of that, everything roughly looks very similar to last year. It's keeping that similar schedule. We try to avoid dates that have some other complication to them, like a holiday or a back-to-back kind of thing, wherever we could. Of course, we have the busy budget season and all of that. So for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. And as a reminder, just for the public, in case they have a question, the school committee can call a meeting at any point it wishes to, and we make public notices if that happens. So if we do need additional meetings, we can put them in.
Any comments or a motion? Member Bowden?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting calendar for the 23-24 school year.
Seconded by member Hurd. All in favor? 7-0. Agenda item number 12 is report from school committee chair. I I actually have something to report this week. I'm so excited. On Thursday, I attended the governor's opioid summit in Portland. There were over 1,400 people statewide that were in attendance, which is just amazing. The biggest thing that I took back from that, well, first of all, one of the breakout sessions that I attended was the Voices of Youth. And it was kids from all over the state. There was one young lady from here in Lewiston who are impacted by a family member substance use. And they spoke to their experiences and shared some of the things that impact their substance use, whether it be vaping or heavier things. And the key points that they kept bringing up from the youth perspective, so it's really important, is that the reason kids start vaping or using anything is because they are bored and they are sad. Those were the two primary words that they used throughout their entire presentation. There was a conversation, a lot of the schools, Machias was one of the schools that was represented. They're holding youth groups in their middle schools and high schools for kids who are impacted by substance use in any way. And the girl that was from Lewiston doesn't attend Lewiston schools, but she lives here, and she was commenting how there was no supported youth group here, and that would be something that would be beneficial to the kids. And those are generally student run. There's adults to help sort of facilitate it, but they're student run where they can just talk about whatever they need to talk about. And I think that would be a wonderful thing for us to figure out how to get that here in Lewiston schools. And then the really big piece is the opioid settlement dollars that are coming in from the settlements for the drug overprescribing. There's various counties and then specific cities that are also getting dollar amounts. And Androscoggin County, they've just finished their calculations. The Maine Recovery Council is a council of 15 people statewide that are making these decisions on where the money will go. The total was 235 million that came into Maine. Androscoggin County as a whole is getting 162,000 for the next 18 years. And Lewiston specifically is getting 419,000 for the next 18 years. And one of the pieces of the allocation of that fund is that at least a portion of that needs to be spent on schools and students. So I don't know where that advocacy comes in to get that money to us and how we're going to spend it. But I think that's something that somebody needs to be on top of if somebody isn't already on top of that. Because it's a significant amount of money and it could support things like possibly vape detectors or something like that. So that was my presentation from last Thursday.
Yeah, I don't want to step on your announcement. I do want to say that we have heard this coming down the pipeline. And actually Lisa Escobar, who's our high school prevention, substance use prevention counselor. She's got tons of very good skills, but she's pitched some ideas to us about getting into schools at a much younger age, because we have a lot of students who are being impacted by substance use in the home, whether it's them or not. And they're growing up with that. And so talking about how we could support those things. I've already had a conversation too. Linda and I have already talked about this a little bit, and also with Heather Hunter about when this money arrives, what will be the carve out for it. So we've already got a conversation going with people that are part of that decision-making process, and we'll make sure we keep our ears to the ground.
As of the presentation, the money that I listed should be here as of August 1st, according to their anticipated funds should be arriving soon. So that's good. Member Damon?
You said that the city would be receiving the 418,000 or whatever it was.
Yeah, 419. Yes.
419. But that is not necessarily any of it allocated directly for schools. Is that correct?
A portion of that is required to go to schools. I don't know what that portion is, but there's a portion of it that's required to go to schools.
Okay.
And then of the Androscoggin County amount, that is also a portion of that as well.
Okay. And Auburn was getting.
And Auburn gets their allocation as well.
Separate, so there's the county that got the smaller amount.
Yeah, the county got the 162. Auburn is getting 253 and Lewiston is getting 419. And that's for the next 18 years.
Right. So every year for the next 18 years.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Member Scott.
Thank you. So there hasn't been a lot of conversation on this, but I know that there is a certain percentage. I'm not sure what it is, like Chair Hart said, to go to the school department, but also the county commissioners start meeting soon for their budget process. And I know that this is part of the agenda. They start meeting next month. And then the budget committee, which I am on for the city of Lewiston, we'll be meeting, that should be all part of that conversation too. So as soon as I know a little bit more and what the percentage is, I'll let you know, and then we'll make sure that we get some conversations going as to what the allocation is and how we can use that.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Agenda item number 13 is report from the superintendent.
So I'm going to refer to my phone because I'm using a loaner laptop. And I missed you last meeting because I was chasing baseballs. But I do have some updates I wanted to share with you. Some things that have just popped up. So these are necessary decisions, but I've been asked to see what the committee's interest is in revisiting the cell phone policy at the high school level. Because it's kind of made its way, and this came up earlier, and we're hearing it now from more and more kids, that kids who are at the middle school for 7th grade when there was no policy, and then 8th grade when there was, said it was a life changer. That they couldn't have them change their day in a positive way. I know we saw a reduction in fights and things like that at the middle school. I attribute that to a number of things, including action that the board, this committee took with students who were engaging in violent activity. But I know a big part of it too was you couldn't spend your whole day bantering and stirring the pot using your cell phone. So we don't have to make this decision now, but I guess I'd be curious if we can try to get a pulse on this, maybe sleep on it, and feel free to reach out to me if you want. But cell phones at the high school, I don't know how you govern it. It would have to be all or nothing. I have reservations both ways, notwithstanding just straight mutiny from students who I don't know that they'll follow it or not. But just want to put a bug in your ear about that's being kicked around again. And again, feel free to sleep on it or share now if you have thoughts. But I am curious about what your thoughts are on re-entertaining that kind of discussion.
We'll just go down the line. Member Bowden.
I would not support banning cell phones from the high school for a number of reasons, but first and foremost, like, you know, a senior at Lewiston High School is 18 years old. I just can't with an adult say, I'm sorry, you can't have your cell phone on you. You know, I obviously have an upcoming senior who drives, and I want to know where she is. I have tracking, all of the things. And I just, as a parent, you know, I can't support that. Not at the high school level. They're not little children. They're not, you know, transitioning into, from elementary school to something higher. They're there. And I think that it's important, you know, that we treat them as such. So I would not support that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think with having our students, our children driving, so many of you know I have three high school students, and you know, if say my driver, only one has their license, and both the other kids drive with him to school in the morning, and then what if he comes home sick? And then I've got to let the other kids know, hey, somebody else is going to pick you up. You're going to have to wait 45 minutes for somebody else. There's just when you've got those teen drivers that are doing a lot for the parents, it's almost like you have to be able to communicate with them. And so that's where I see, I mean, I could easily, you know, 3 times a week call the front desk and try to coordinate with my 3 boys, but it's easier just to do a quick text. And if they use their phone in class, I expect it'll get taken away.
And anyone else? I don't remember whose hands went up. Member Bopala.
Could you refresh me what the current policy is for the high school?
So during classes, it's to be out of sight, essentially. And then during transitions, lunch, things like that, they use their phones. The intent is that they use them responsibly, whereas the middle school, they're supposed to be off and away the entire day. They're not supposed to come out.
I guess there's no magic switch that we can use to turn off certain functions.
The FCC and FAA have said I cannot do that. I actually investigated that, did some research many years ago when I was there as principal. I wanted to put a small device on the roof of the building and just shut it off. And we can't. I wanted to, but we can't. Yeah.
Member Scott.
So I had it on my list as future agenda items, so I don't think it hurts in having the conversation. I understand there's a plethora of things that could be said about this, and I think that that's very valuable to hear all of that. But I also think that, you know, I've heard from a few people, are you guys going to talk about this? And there were a few things. The bathrooms was one of them, and cell phone use was another one. Are we going to end up talking about it again? So I don't think that it hurts. I think that if we're going to have it on a future agenda, though, that we should definitely make sure that we put it out there we want to hear from folks. I really do. I want to hear, and especially from students and from parents. Personally, I understand where you're both coming from when you have a student in the school, but I still see it as a serious issue that's happening in between classes where students are affecting each other via social media, Twitter, then Snapchat and everything else. And I think it's something we still should be discussing. So I'd like to see it on a future agenda item, please. Thank you. Before January, please. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, was that your whole?
No.
Okay.
No, I have several tonight. I also wanted to throw an update. We did have a community meeting regarding the fields and the Franklin complex. I actually think that meeting went very well. Got a lot of good ideas from folks. We also took a list of people that wanted to be on an email list or a reach out list for volunteers to see who might want to be involved in something. And we've got a meeting schedule coming up. So I'll keep you posted. Working with City's been great. Nicole Welch and Megan Bates are kind of taking the lead on this from a city complex perspective. So we're working with them and we'll see what happens. And I know the city's going to talk about it more in a workshop coming up mid-August. And then depending on how things go, probably take a look at any kind of ordinance or policy shift after that workshop. So more to come. And I bet Ms. Scott's going to share more about it in a city update. But just want to let you know we did have that meeting. Student rep. This is something that's been kind of a challenge for me. We've worked hard over the years to get student reps. We go through what I think is a pretty good process at the high school. And I know that attendance has always been a challenge. And I'm just wondering what the committee's interest is in maybe shaking up the process of how we get student reps or how we look at what are the expectations for them. Should they get a credit for school, like that kind of stuff, building a little bit of an expectation, a little bit of recognition and credit. So one idea that I could pitch moving forward, or I don't know if this is school committee policy, but just want your feedback. But if we have some kind of selection process, make it a little more open, but then also say you have to come to one meeting a month. And it can vary, but you have to be at one. We'd like you at more, but you have to be at one. And if they do come to one meeting per month for a year, that we issue them some kind of credit as a community diplomat or something of that effect. Because it is a task to get the packets and to see things and to come listen to me talk too much all the time. So I just want to put that out there to you. I think in the past what's happened is some school counselors have gotten together and they've taken a look at students that they think are kind of actively involved in, whether it's the House of Reps or have voice in the school. And then that gets funneled to the administration, and the administration talks to the students, and then they go from there. And it just feels like that pool could be opened up a bit. And I know that the Youth Advisory Council has done some amazing work. I actually had an idea, and I don't know if I'd want to do this to a student, but take some of your Lewiston Youth Advisory Council students and have that be part of the process of, okay, sit here too. Because so many things are coming up in that common sphere. But I also don't want to commit a student to multiple things, but they could put their name in. So anyway, I'd like a more robust or more open opportunity for students to say, hey, I want to be a rep on the school committee and affect change.
Member Beaumont.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree. Any one of Mrs. Crowley's students would have been wonderful. I think we need a student representative to ask them how it's, how's it playing in Peoria, everything, as it should be. We've done that with the bathrooms and had some illumination on what's going on. Perhaps we could just invite and, based on I'm sure there are ways of doing it, but with a school our size, with a group of civic-minded individuals that we see, we should not have trouble getting a good candidate. I don't think the interview process or selection process should be onerous or long or extended, but there's a good group of people we could choose from, and we need their input.
Member Medina?
So I love the idea of them being able to get a credit for it. I'm also curious to know what is the process right now for being a school committee rep, student rep?
It's kind of a small process at the high school. It makes its way to me. I meet with the student to make sure they're interested and try to explain the process a little bit about what we do. And then they get invites to the meetings. If we haven't seen them in a while, I reach out. I ask them to let me know if they can't make it, things like that. And it's been a challenge, as you know. And we're picking good students who are just busy. And I think that part of the problem might be that we have a junior and a senior rep only. Maybe we need to open that up. Maybe we should have half a dozen. Maybe there should be a middle school rep from the 8th grade. And it's not that they necessarily have to be all here at the same meeting, but maybe there's a rotation and they know to be ready for their thing. I'm just trying to be creative with something that I think is not working.
And I think following the model of the youth, why am I blanking? Youth Advisory Council, and having a school committee member that meets with them like maybe once a month or something, and then they can work on what do you want to talk about at the next meeting or what's going on. I think that would be a more engaging process. And I think that's part of it. I think we're picking students that are very academically heavy. So they don't have a lot of free time. And then they don't necessarily know when to engage or how to engage. So I think that making it a more interactive process would be better. Member Scott.
So for the interviews for the Youth Advisory Council, we asked them specifically. It's one of the questions. We have a 2-page list of questions we really go through, kind of, not to give them a hard time, but to really make sure that they're committed to doing the work that's involved with it and let them know the kind of work that's happening. And I think that can easily be adjusted to work here with the student reps. And I think opening it up to other grades. I mean, we have freshmen on the Youth Advisory Council. We have all the way up to seniors. I think that that's a great thing too. I think that as this moves through, maybe even inviting them to be part of that conversation. I also think that an advisor is an excellent idea. I mean, it's not one meeting a month. I meet with them sometimes 4 or 5 times a month. But it's a great exchange. They understand where I'm coming from. They understand, and I get to hear the things that are really important to them. Is some of the things that I've brought here to you guys, I've heard directly from them. So I think that kind of process, like any committee that we have, it's like a subcommittee. You assign one person on the school committee to be the advisor, along with an administrator or maybe an administrator at the high school, wherever they're going to be located, to, you know what I mean, to do that. And then you can meet. If you have more than one, they can take turns and rotate to ensure and let them know that this is not an onerous thing. Yes, they have the whole packet to read each month, but the more important role, I think, is for them to be representing the voice of students in our city. And if they understood that as more the important part and not, I've got to read this 128 pages when they're really not, if they want to be part of that conversation, I think that that's great. But I think to give them more the role of, we want to hear what you're saying, because that direct connection, like Paul said, it's invaluable to have that conversation with those students, to hear what they have to say, like we heard at the bathrooms. I think it's really important. So I think changing it a little bit would be a good idea.
My first 2 years on the school committee as an adult, I didn't really know what was going on. So I can't imagine these students open up an agenda and read through that and can follow it all, because it's a lot.
Most didn't, Megan.
Yeah. Member Damon.
I think, this whole idea of a student rep, maybe it's a mistake. Maybe what we should be talking about is incorporating these meetings into part of the work that the Youth Advisory Council is doing. Hearing from more than one student, every one of these students has a different social group. They have a different perspective, especially if they're freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors. They hear different things at the high school. And so if we had 6 members of the Youth Advisory Council who each were going to come twice a year, our chances of getting a more broader experience, a better representation of it, and if committing to 2 meetings or 3 meetings a year is a heck of a lot different than committing to 20. And I think it would broaden the response that we get. Every one of these kids hears something different and they hear it differently. I would think that maybe not trying to say it's this kid, because that kid has his group of friends and that's who talks to him. And I would be interested to talk to our previous student reps as to how much actual input they get from other classmates and stuff that they could bring to us. Whereas if it was broadened, it might work a heck of a lot better. And it's not to diminish the input of any of them as anything, it's to expand it. 2 of them come each time or something. That's what the Youth Advisory Council would be a place to start, and then have some other kids if they wanted to join in. The recognition piece of it would be good, but it may be that we're asking more of them if they're those heavily loaded students. It may be a lot more to ask of them than we really have a right to ask. But a couple of meetings a year, that might be a heck of a lot easier to fulfill.
Member Bowden?
Thank you. I think what it comes down to is, for an adolescent mind, these meetings are probably extremely boring. And I know we're picking busy kids and, that's a great excuse, but these meetings are really boring for them. And so I really appreciate that we moved their agenda up past public comment, but I almost think it shouldn't be a report from a student rep. It should be like a Q&A section of the school committee meetings with these students, because that's really the purpose. That's why we want them here. We want to hear from them and we want to ask them questions, and we want them to ask us questions. And so I feel like the way that it's worded in the traditional way that you've been going about it for all of these years, I think it's outdated. And so I love that you're looking at revamping it. I love the idea of students getting a credit for showing up and being a part of our discussions, but I don't think they need to stay for the entire meeting, because there's a lot of stuff on here that they don't care about. They don't care, like we're reviewing policies. Maybe they do, and that's great if they do, and that entertains them and they want to stay for that. But I just think at the beginning of our meetings, we should just have a Q&A with some students and try to get a good rotation of kids. And I don't disagree with Member Damon's idea of using the advisory council if they're already, committed kids in the community that are looking to make this district better. Let's bring them in. I think that's a great idea.
Member Whitlow?
Yeah, quickly. I just want to say what I've been saying for a while. We just need to make sure that the students that are representing feel like they belong to this group in some way, and they'll speak up and talk more. And I just want to make sure that we're I think the credit, it shows that we valued their input,
Member Medina?
So when I first joined the school committee, I had mentioned the school committee going to the high school and introducing ourselves, because a lot of kids don't even know what the school committee is and that they can advocate for themselves. So I still would love to do that at some point, and I think that would add to the to the more voices and the different perspectives. So yeah, just want to throw that out there again.
All right.
All right, next up, we've continued the conversations offline of this meeting, but connected to meetings we've had, looking at student behaviors and trying to harness specific areas of interest for them and have opportunities for them to learn about school expectations and how to behave. And so I just wanted to touch base quickly. We're exploring something potentially for the fall around kind of like a fellowship academy type piece. And I don't have all the pieces nailed down, but we're working on that. I want to bring something back to you in August to talk more about what this might look like. And I think we're going to target middle school at this point to see if we can pull something off with kind of how to do school and trying to engage students' interest or different spheres of interest, but connected specifically to reintegrating with school and understanding the school is really for you and not a thing that you have to do. So that's a piece that will be coming more. Staff wise, just to give you a quick update, we still are looking for some upper elementary teachers. We have a job fair coming up. You'll see some messaging going out from me saying what we're looking for. But all in all, we are in much better shape than we were last year. We still have some areas that we're focusing on, but I feel a whole lot better today than I did a year ago. But we're still working on it. We also have vaccines that we kind of hit the pause button on last spring because we want to see what legislation was going to do. I've prepared a letter coming out of my office that we're going to coordinate with nurses on that. There were no changes that were significant enough at the state level for us to deviate from those vaccine expectations. So messages are going to go out to communities. You may get a message, you may get an inquiry, but folks are going to be told that we have to fall back in line with that state law. And those who have not yet been vaccinated to the levels that they need to be will be asked to do so. There's windows in there for people to get it done. So it shouldn't be shock and awe, like don't show up for school kind of thing, but there could be a point in time in which families are told, you've had a window, you've had time, we've notified you in every language, we've helped you set up meetings with your own primary care providers. We've really gone above and beyond, and people have not yet completed them, so.
Member Whitlow.
And we're not talking about COVID vaccines. We are talking about the stuff we've always had to have in the past. Okay.
Yeah, correct. Yep. Not COVID, nothing to do with COVID. Let's see here. What else did I have? Committees are starting back up. I say starting back up. I think we just got so busy in the spring with graduation and all those end of year things. So you'll start to see messaging about those committees meeting, and we're starting to put together. We had that parent community group that we actually didn't get off the ground late last year. Actually reached out to Megan, I don't know if it's today or recently, but the days kind of blur for me, about finding some dates to get that rolling. So just so you have a heads up on that. We'll share that information out when we have some dates, pathways subcommittee, and also be looking for some other dates for just those recurring committees that we had in the past, including finance committee and things like that.
Member Beauplan, sorry.
Thank you. I can't remember where I read it. I can't put my finger on it, but do we have a dropout prevention committee that is staffed by one school representative?
So that's a high school based committee that does need to be meeting, and there was some effort last year. I know Chair
I had
Parks
started coordinating that with Tyler before he left, and then I have it on my calendar, like recurring, because I never follow up with Principal Radke to get that going. But yeah, there's a whole list of state requirements for who needs to be a participant. We'd reached out to Jamie from the store next door to find a student because it requires a student and all kinds of pieces. And then that fell off when we got the new principal, and here we are a year later. So no, no is the short answer.
If someone that the best organizer, if someone can organize, I'd be very happy to be the school committee rep, unless somebody else wants it.
Did you have your hand up?
No.
Oh, okay.
let's see here, make sure I got on my list. The last thing that I had, at least for now, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something. We're at a point now financially in working with Adam and Bill and the business office that we realize that the financials are not something that we've done as regularly as we'd like. And so that will come back into your consent agenda. The books are up and running, things look good. Adam's feeling like we've got everything where we'd like to have it. Always looking for improvements. So what we're looking at for a process with that is to meet with the finance committee and go through that and then share it with the school committee as a follow-up. So just want to let you know that if you start seeing that pop up, it's something that hasn't been up there for a while. I don't know if it's ever been on a regular schedule since I became superintendent or even before I was, but we feel like it's appropriate to have that at a regular cycle. So we're going to bring that back. I think that's all I have for now.
Member Damon.
Jake, is there any update on the two bills that were originally discussed at the legislature about the support group and also the ed techs? Was there any update on those bills?
Those are So I believe they recessed without addressing it specifically, but it's not off the table. The biggest thing now from a legislative perspective is one, what's going to get carried into the fall. And then two, what's sitting on the appropriations table, which is a massive, massive, massive list of things that there's not enough money for. So we'll see what happens with that. So no move on that yet. I did have one other thing. I apologize. I think Bill was giving me a nod. Just some project updates. I know that came up last meeting. The project up here that's going on with really that work is about things that happen during construction to kind of beat up the pavement on the edges there by the tennis courts. And also that turn is part of that expansion project. That turn is not safe. As you come into the campus and you take the hard left if you're coming in this way, or hard right if you're going out that way, right by the tennis courts where that island is. So that's being widened. And then there's some drainage things going on. And then instead of just being a dirt strip that's all beat up pavement, it will be paved so that people can park there and access things that way. And then I think the question came up when I was away of how are we paying for that project? And that's all just carryover from the expansion. That cleaning up that corner was part of the expansion effort anyway. It was just the timing of when things got done last year. I didn't want to do it during the school year. Been sharing some updates that are out there. We're looking to address the graffiti, which actually became an insurance claim. Just so you know, we'll pay a deductible, but fixing that is incredibly expensive because of where it is. You can't get to it safely. We can't just send someone up with a can of paint. It requires, it's going to require at the middle school, excuse me, the clock tower at the middle school has some graffiti on the clock tower. And so we're going to take care of that, but it's going to require a crane, a lift assembly. And if anybody knows who did that, we'd love to know more. A lot of summer activities happening, floors getting done, things like that. But we've done some floors in some office spaces that had water damage or just things underneath. So those things are getting picked up, cleaned up. We have some abatement going on at the high school connected to some other projects, whether it's flooring and or things getting ready for our HVAC project. So those things are happening. But if you go to any school right now, there's probably something going on, whether it's floors, walls. There's some pavement projects, obviously, and so we're doing a lot of good things. The roof at Dingley, actually, Ray Roy shared some pictures with Bill and I today because he actually went up there. I'm not interested, mostly because it's hot. I'm not scared of heights. I don't see the need to be near black slate on a 90-degree day. But Ray went up, but it looks great. It really is a beautiful thing. I know we went back and forth on what are other products that might last longer kind of thing, but the slate really is a beautiful product. It looks great. The flashing underneath is going to last. They've fixed that and done a great job. And they're a little less than halfway. I don't want to say less than a third, but somewhere around a third of the way. But the weather has just been so disruptive, as we all know from our saturated everything. But when they have good weather, they make good progress. So we'll keep chipping away. I think those are the bigger items I can think of for now.
Agenda item number 14, city council rep.
Thank you. So we did have a meeting last week. We had a workshop presentation. We had actually a long meeting. We didn't get done till a little after 11 last week, so it was a long meeting. We had a workshop presentation by Lewiston Housing Authority for a transitional housing project at the Lewiston Ramada Inn property. We had our recognition of the outgoing Lewiston Youth Advisory Council and the announcement for our new members. And we also had a conversation around the parks. As the superintendent mentioned, we tabled the conversation until we could have further community work done. We felt very strongly that where we had just met with the community the prior week, it really didn't look or bode well to say, we're going to close it all down right now before we actually try to attempt to some of the suggestions that were made. So we wanted to give it time so that we can work through and see if that can work before we have that conversation. And I believe that conversation is coming up in September, not August, if I recall correctly. We had several things on the agenda around the ordinances and zoning and land use code. Again, we also had a conversation with putting together a memorandum of understanding between Lewiston and United Ambulance to ensure better services. Hopefully we get better services. There's been some timeframe services and stuff like that that needed to be hashed out. And let's see, we also had a discussion about they're going to be selling some of the stuff that is in some of the airport hangars that I guess have been sitting there for quite a while when the Elite, thank you, was there but left. And there's some, I guess, some big pieces there that are sellable. So they're looking at if they can get a profit off of that and work on some other items around the airport. And let's see, we also appointed 2 members for the watershed ad hoc committee. And I would just like to point out that we had our groundbreaking today for the Wedgewood project, which is part of the Choice Neighborhood. This was the big grant that we got, the $30 million grant. We were one of 3 cities in the whole country and the smallest city. I mean, we were competing with places like Detroit, Los Angeles, and Lewiston got this grant. And I would just like to point out that the big reason we got this grant is because of a certain member sitting here with us today, and that is Ashley Medina. And I'd like to thank her publicly for all the work that she did and for standing up for our community and fighting for that, because that's a big deal. We're looking at 82 new apartments from market rate to subsidize everything in between. And this is just the start. There is also another project that's going to be starting next year, which is going to add probably, I think, closer to 90 apartments. So this is going to make some significant changes in Lewiston. And I think it's a really big deal. We had everybody there today. The governor was there. Senator Collins was there. Senator King was there. I mean, I showed up and went, what the heck's going on? It was like Secret Service all around and no place to park, as some members parked on the sidewalk. And I'm not going to say who. But it was a great event and it was a great turnout. And I really appreciate the amount of work that went into that. And I look forward to the next steps that are happening with that. It's a big deal. Thank you.
Agenda item number 15 is updates from school committee subcommittees. Has anyone met? Nope. Okay. Future agenda items. Member Beauplan.
Yeah, I know some of you might be holding your breath thinking I'm going to propose something, and certainly Member Scott has given me some ideas on how to continue this, but I'm really not going to kick a dead horse. I, number one, hesitate to take any authority away from Principal Radke. He is the admiral of the ship. Captain, you're the admiral, sorry. We've been able to raise the curtain on concerns, valid concerns, from different people on the success of this. We do have a checkpoint in November, which I will make sure is followed. And quite frankly, the vote would not go the way I would like it. And as I've said before, and quoting Genghis Khan, only a fool fights a battle he can't win. So I'll thank you again for your attention on that.
Any other future agenda items? I have 2 things. I wrote down LD 1315, but that may not be correct because I was scribbling a million notes. But if it's that one, it has been passed and it is requiring Narcan training, education and awareness trainings in schools as low as elementary school. And so that's going to be coming at some point from a state level, but I would like to, I don't know if it involves Lisa or have a presentation sooner than that, to discuss how we would roll that out, because I think we don't need to wait until the state tells us to do it. I think it's something that's very important. The presentation at that thing, at the summit on Thursday with the youth speaking, one of the youth had actually gone home from school and found the roommate had passed away, and there wasn't Narcan. And so this is something that our students should have access to, because we don't know what they encounter when they're outside in the community, in their homes or wherever. And so I'd like to see us working on that sooner than when the state tells us we have to. And then I could be wrong on the timing, but I think that the incoming freshmen, and I'm only going on this time frame because of my own kids in school, but I think the incoming freshmen this year are the first class that have never had the 0 to 100 grading scale, that have only been, they only know the 1 through 4. And so this is going to be confusing for them. And so I would just like to know how we're preparing them to understand their shift in grading, because they've only ever known the 1 through 4 system. And so I would like to have something to, yes, well, it's 8 years. Yeah. So yes, I don't know when we can do that, but I would like to do that before the school year starts, so that we have something in place for day 1 for students to be prepared to know how they're getting graded. And that's it. And I skipped agenda item number 16, which was the community announcements. Nope. Nobody. Okay. Agenda item number 18 is to enter into executive session to discuss negotiations in accordance with 1 MRSA 405D.
So moved.
Moved by member Damon,